Hello, and thank you for listening to this episode of the Get Out There podcast. My name is Billy Newman. I'm here with Robert Biscarret. How you doing, Robert?
Hey, Billy, I'm doing well. How about you?
I'm doing good, man. Thanks for calling in, doing episode 5. We got
I know.
we got the feed started. We got a couple episodes up. It's kind of fun. Thanks for doing a
Yeah,
podcast.
yeah, we're moving right along.
we're getting a couple in for the little bit of time that we've been doing it. But so we finished up our conversation in episode 4. We were talking about some of our experiences backpacking. Like I was talking
Yeah.
about the Wallowas. You were talking about that King Range trip that you had. And I know at the end of it, we just kind of come up to that idea where we wanted to talk a little bit about some of the equipment that we brought with us, or like some of the
hmm
breakdown that we had of the gear that we would bring when we were backpacking or when we were doing other stuff. I wanted to break that idea down with you a little bit.
Yeah, I mean it's pretty important. It can make or break a trip, kind of depending on what you have or don't have.
Yeah, yeah, I've definitely mispacked before.
Oh yeah.
So,
S-
oh, go ahead, Robert.
Oh, I was just gonna say, do you tend to overpack or underpack?
Let's see. I think well, so I guess if going for backpacking, originally I was overpack. Now it's probably
Yeah.
still overpack, but I've gotten it pretty tight. When I'm in shape for it, I do an okay job. But what I noticed though is when you accidentally or you just mishap and don't bring something that you really needed. Like the one
Yeah.
that's always been for me is like a sleeping pad or something like that. Like where it's like
Oh.
that thing where it goes from like it's like 30% less of a comfortable trip just because of that one thing that you don't have.
Yeah, and it
you,
weighs so little.
yeah, you have everything else in association with it, but you don't have that one piece. That I think that's happened a couple times before. Like, I don't know, it's probably happened with like my stove or with food or something like that. Like we talked about Tabasco on our last trip, where you're like,
Yeah,
oh, if
yeah.
only I had that just one ingredient, this would be rad. But
See, I'm the opposite. I always tend to overpack. I I go overkill. I just start getting into that mindset of like, well, okay, well, what if I had to make a splint? Well, okay, well, I'll need rope. Okay, what if I had to do this? And I just get into all these, hypotheticals, and then I end
oh
up
yeah,
packing for every situation I could think of.
I've packed for way too many hypotheticals.
Yeah, but you know what's funny is you do all that planning, and then the one thing that would happen would be the only thing you didn't compensate for,
Oh
and
yeah,
then
no, it's really true sometimes. That's a weird part of the compensation about the outdoors. You get like you can plan for a lot of hypotheticals. And I want to break this down with you too later probably, but like the idea of like equipment that you bring versus risk, like how likely is that risk to happen that you need the equipment? There's probably some different experiences we've had around that, but it's just kind of like a weird idea of how much how much effort goes into preventing certain types of things when
hmm
maybe like a lot of that stuff can be handled with like a Leatherman, I guess if you think, or like or
yeah,
some Swiss Army knife,
yeah, exactly.
or but like some level of good base gear. It seems like that's the thing that I've gotten the most comfortable about in the last, I don't know, couple times of backpacking, or like the longer uh, times that we've done backpacking, when you get like a little bit more focused in on just the few things that you need to do for that 5 day period that you're going to be there. Because that's the big thing. And it's weird how you notice this. The longer that you go out, the less you finally realize the less you need to bring at all. Like if you're going
Oh,
for 80 days, you almost need to bring nothing. But if you're going for 3 days, you seem like in your mind you need to bring everything.
yeah, that's funny you bring that up because that's exactly how that works too. It's
Isn't that
just like
isn't that weird?
I don't know if it's like the complex of like you just can't really foresee 80 days in the future, so you kind of give up. You're like, well, I can't even plan for this,
Right.
so
Yeah.
I'll just bring my minimalist stuff. Or where in 3 days you're kind of thinking like, well, this might happen. Day three, okay, this I'll need this,
Yeah. You're trying to
and then
navigate every corner and every maneuver of this future map of circumstances that you might run into. And it's
and
just,
then you
yeah, you can't.
yeah, you do the thing where like you're going for 3 days also, and you're like, well, wow, I have so much room. I only have 3 days worth of stuff, which is pretty minimalist. And then you end up going, oh well, I got room for this, and then
Snacks.
before you know it, yeah, you're just packed up,
Let's put a six pack in the top. Yeah, let's go. Yeah,
man.
that's happened a couple times. I was trying to think about how that worked out for me. I remember early on when I did like a couple early backpacking trips. We talked about this in that first episode. I think doing some stuff on the Lower Rogue, maybe the
Yeah.
second one, where yeah, that first trip I did the 40 whatever miles down the Lower Rogue, and it was just way rushed and it was way too heavy and all the stuff. You like we brought a bunch of cans, but we didn't have a can opener and like yeah, like what was this? What was the system that was going behind this? Like you get things that work in a kitchen, but there's no system behind that that helps you do that in the backcountry, I guess, if or keep things good or like purify enough water to have.
Uh-huh.
I like that's always
What,
that was always one, having enough
so
water with you.
so that's something I want to ask you. What kind of water purification do you
I have always been
prefer?
under under tech about this. Like I really wanted more equipment for water purification. It's probably
Uh-huh.
been well, I've been fortunate a lot of the time, but yeah, it's been risky maybe one or two times. But I've only ever had this squeeze bottle charcoal filter. Like you fill it up with maybe 12 ounces of water
Oh
and you
yeah.
squeeze it out of this filter. What we would do, Marina and I, when we go backpacking, we were up in the Wallowas, we were up in the Trinity Alps, we were up in the Tetons. It was a lot of spots where it was like really clean snow melt. So it worked out in
Uh-huh.
our favor a lot of times. On the other hand, there was times where we were on the lower rogue in the canyon and there's really no good, it was mosquito puddles that you're, well,
God.
or whatever it
Well,
is.
that's where I caught Giardia. Not drinking out of
Ah,
a mosquito puddle, but
yikes.
yeah, that was nasty. And that was my filter broke, and that was the biggest thing I learned was I don't know. You always hear an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
Ooh,
Um,
yeah.
like it's man, just maintaining your equipment, cleaning it after every trip, doing the basic maintenance that your equipment requires.
See, that's
And then,
that's something I'd not understood for a long time, and yeah, the system that we had for water was super basic. Like we'd fill up the 12 ounces, we put the top on, and we'd like squeeze it. You have to like kind of crush it through the charcoal filter to get it to
and those
cleanse.
move slow too.
Way slow, and so you
Yeah.
crush it out. So we'd have like our Nalgene bottle like between our knees and our hands, just kind of like crushing down on this creek water that we were trying to put that we were trying to put in our Nalgene. We had like three or four of them that we had to sit at the creek at to pump out, I don't know, 2 or 3 liters of water to take back to camp with us or to go hiking with for the next rest of the day. So I used just that one filter for like
Uh
three
huh.
years. I'm
Okay.
like way too many gallons of water, I think, for that until the charcoal just finally broke off, or like the whole filter unit just finally broke off. I figured, oh yeah, it's probably
Did that happen? Did
done
that
its
break
time.
off on a trip?
It did, yeah,
Yeah, that's when they always do it.
yeah. Well, I think it was. I know we were on a trip and we realized we really couldn't get water, so that was that was a tough one. I think that was up in the Trinity Alps. That was yeah, that was in like Northern California, and we were fortunate enough that we just didn't get sick, but it was snow, it was super super cold, super crisp water, like right up above the tree line. So it was
Yeah, when
it
you're
was
up
pretty
above the
pure.
tree line, you're usually pretty safe. I mean, your chances of having an animal defecate or die in the creek or something is pretty minimal.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
uh but
yeah.
yeah, I know like when we
Crazy.
were in Kings Canyon, there were a ton of places where I mean, after the Giardia incident it was kind of like, I'm not taking any chances, but at the
Sure.
same time, if it was ever if I were ever in the situation where I needed to take the risk, I couldn't really picture a better place to take it,
Oh yeah,
you
then
know.
somewhere like that. Well, do you carry like iodine tablets with you? Had you done
No.
that for water purification ever?
No, I haven't. I've heard they've kind of got a funky taste. I don't know.
I've heard that they
Um,
do too, but I guess I've heard like well, I think maybe this this situation like we're talking about is I guess have that maybe around for your backup water supply. I don't
no,
know.
no,
Would you not do it?
yeah. I just nope, Jardy all the way, man. Like,
Well, so what was the water filter that you picked or pick now as the one you use? Because I need
I
to
can't
buy
remember
one.
the specific name of it, but it's a catadin, or and I
But
love
it's
it, man. It's like two liters a minute, so it's actually a
wow.
pretty, yeah, it's super efficient, and but it's got like a filtered end on a hose, and then it's basically got like a hand lever, like you would see the well pumps back at like the turn of the century, how people would pump out of the
Yeah.
groundwater.
Sure, that makes sense.
Um, the same basic setup, and then it runs through a filter it has like a sediment trap that'll catch any large sediment coming in,
Okay.
and then it goes up through like a carbon disc, and then it comes down through a charcoal filtration system, and then back through an actual like I don't know, some kind of cloth filter. So it has three variants of filtration before it actually gets through to your
To your analogy bottle,
bottle or
or yeah,
whatever you're
your
putting
bottle.
it
Yeah.
into. Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. Has it worked out
So
pretty well for you? Like, did you use that downriver a lot, or did you guys have other systems on the boat when you're doing guide
um
stuff?
you know what? We carry all of our own water on the boat. Like before we leave, we'll load up, 5 or 6 5-gallon cans of water.
Yeah, okay. I
And
would figure
so
that makes a lot
so we
more
just bring
sense.
all that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, when you're running commercial stuff like that, it's just, I mean, any type of risk you can mitigate.
Yeah, I figured you wouldn't
You
use it
know,
for the commercial stuff, but well, I was wondering for you, or like, if you had like, if you would put it through a lot of repetitions of its pace, or what I guess what I was wondering is like, how long does it last? What's the kind of maintenance that you ran into with the issues you had with your
okay,
last one?
so what I didn't do, they have new gaskets that come with it.
Okay, yeah,
Um, they have new carbon discs. They have new charcoal that you put in there. Um, you need to keep the gaskets lubricated so that way when you let it sit for a year and a half before your next trip, you don't pull it out and those gaskets are cracked.
oh really?
And that I just kind of had, the hellstorm of all three of those things, where it was just like my sixth trip that I'd used it over the period of like 3.5 years,
Sure, yeah.
and just, I just didn't maintain it, and ultimately ended up kind of paying for that.
Oh man, that's so sad. That's tough. I
Well, lesson learned though.
Oh yeah, sure. I get that. Yeah, I remember
Yeah,
there was one trip that we did. See, this is the nutty thing is that like when in Oregon, it's great because you have this luxury of just being able to carry a water filter with you and have this assurance that you're going to run into consistent water supply for your whole
yeah,
backpacking trip through the wilderness. We have a lot of creeks and stuff. A lot of the places maybe you and I'll probably go are in like mountain areas where like we were talking about like going up into an alpine lake or something like that. There's normally a creek feeding off of that or some kind of snow melt that's sort of
yeah.
consistent through that draw, and you're going to be able to pull water from that for the time that you're there. But what was tricky is when we were out further east. I think we were out in Utah. We went to Capitol Reef and we did a backpacking trip there, and
Yeah.
it's tricky because out there when you get into Utah or probably anywhere in the Southwest region there, you have to bring all of the water with you on a backpacking trip. So it's just part of the weight you pack.
Hmm.
It's pretty nuts, and I think it's like a ratio of about 2 gallons per person per day, which seems reasonable really. But if you're doing just a couple days, that means like each person is carrying another 8 pounds or like 8 gallons of water on them,
Well,
which is a ton
well,
of
yeah,
weight.
which is 64 pounds of water.
It was, I remember we did Capitol Reef. We had, I think, 4 gallons. So I think Marina and I
Uh huh.
both had 2 gallons. Maybe I think I might have had more gallons. But she
Okay.
probably she carried a lot of gallons of water, and we carried all this water up there, and it was, well, a lot. It was ridiculous. But yeah, it was probably another 30 pounds each.
Yeah. No, I believe it. I mean, water's super heavy, and it takes up a lot of space.
Oh, it takes up so much space. Yeah, there's a picture of me just kind of strapped in gallon jugs. We didn't even have like a system of like we don't have like even a camel pack. That's like 2 liters, just that's ounces,
Yeah, you're gonna
not
burn through that in an
gallons.
hour.
Yeah, so yeah, you have that full. That's on your chest. Then you have like three just gallon bottles of water, like kind of strapped around your backpack.
Did you have like a pole strapped across your shoulders with with
With
buckets of
a
water
yeah, the
hanging
big
off you?
bucket on the side.
Yeah.
I put over the top of my head as I hike around. Out there, that's like the environment that it seems like you'd need it. But it was strange because I think there were a couple water sources around, but they had dried up by that time in the year. They're seasonal. I think they're like in that area of the desert, and it's really remote out there when you get out to Capitol Reef because there's no big town near there, really.
Uh huh.
You know what I mean? I mean, even I guess Death Valley is kind of the same way, but Las Vegas is sort of close to it. But out in Capitol Reef, man, there was nothing out there, and it was just super dry, and
Yeah.
it was super caustic to your being, man. If
What
you were
what
out there,
what time of year were you out
we
there?
were there in October, and it was
Okay,
and
so
it
it was
was
actually a
still
little bit
pretty hot.
cooler.
it
I
was
bet.
it was
Yeah.
still like, oh man, like in the day, this is kind of hard to do. But we did, I think, like a handful of miles in to this arch that was back there that we wanted to camp by, and we had a couple days out there. It was cool. It was really remote. It was interesting to see some of that landscape out there. But man, there was no water to be found. It was just high desert. Like there was like a mud pit that was maybe 4 or 5 miles further. That was like the saving grace back in the 1800s when you were a frontiersman in that area. Imagine
Oh.
that with no gear, no water filter. No, yeah, like you're out of water for a while, but there's a chance that there's this muddy pit that's like a natural spring a few miles up this way, and you might be able to get enough water to survive to your next drop off. I don't know, down an
The good
elevation down
old
the mountain.
days. The
Man,
good old days.
oh, that would have been terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah, you think about what the frontiersmen would have had to have, or just get through to get through dealing with water filter, or I mean, obviously they're not filtering their water, but just dealing with the water sources that they have to encounter.
Yeah. I don't even want to think about that.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh man.
I think
Oh
that they'd
man.
argue that we're probably living in the good old days, not
Yeah.
them.
Yeah. I bet that's probably true. Um, but yeah, I don't think I've had like a big problem with the water filter before. We've done well, because we'd always like have it so that we just have like a big store of water on us while we were moving. And then
Yeah.
well, I was gonna ask you about like if we were moving on from what we were talking about. I wanted to talk to you about like the stoves that you would bring. Have you
Yeah.
brought like a stove with you much backpacking, or do you try like not? Well, yeah, because you do just the Jetboil food all the time, right?
Yeah, so that's my primary is my jet boil. I mean, you can really do just about anything in there.
Man, yeah, it's great.
I mean, there's so many different ways to use it. Like one thing you can do is just, I mean, if you have time, I mean, YouTube is such a vast information center. You can go in there and just look stuff up and just like ways to be creative with a jet boil. I mean, they have
Oh,
instructionals
really?
on how to bake in your jet boil.
Oh,
You know,
for real?
you can bake a mountain cake while you're up there.
I
And
didn't know that. I burned a lot of stuff in that Jetboil. Well, because it just goes to like hot right away. I don't know how you bake in it, but that's
mm,
really cool.
yeah, it honestly it seemed like more hassle than it was worth, but
Yeah,
so I
yeah.
haven't
Bring a
tried it.
slice of
But I
cake.
mean, but it is possible. Um,
That's
let me see.
cool. So,
Other than that, I've just got this cheap little what is that? It's like the isobutane. Is that what we run those
yeah,
canisters?
I
I
remember
think that's
that.
what it is.
I remember that little
Um,
stove. That's a cool one. That's a good backup stove.
yeah, it is just like a I think I paid like $30 for it, man. The thing's tiny. Like it's just a little backpacking stove and
Sure,
it's awesome.
sure. I think those are really useful. We did like our 50-day trip. We did that with just the jet boil, and we did as
Uh-huh.
much as we could with that second trip that we did for like 110 days or whatever it was. We
Yeah.
did that with the jet boil. We had to buy like a propane stove, like just a single, kind of the same idea as a jet boil or a backpacker stove, where it's just
Yeah.
a burner that fits on top of the tank. We had to buy one
Yeah.
of those halfway through the trip, and it was nuts because like we just worn out the jet boil. It was nuts because like so I guess
So
if
when you use one for 110 days straight, they have a hard time.
yeah, if you unscrew it, screw it back together. But we still cobbled it together to work because we needed to boil water. I remember it was out on the
Yeah.
Oregon coast. I think it was a spot that we had taken you to after that. Was it like Sisters Rock area?
Oh
Do you
yeah,
remember when
yeah.
we
We
were
went there.
there?
That was really cool.
That
Yeah.
was a cool spot. It was fun and so we were there the year before I took you guys there, and we had camped there for better half of a week or so, and we were using the,
Hmm.
the jet boil to make coffee and do everything with it. But the stove part, the threading that goes down where it would connect to the canister had like started to wear out, so it would pop, it would blow the stove off of the tank. Like the threading would fail, it
Oh.
would just pull apart, and so it was like it was leaking, and you couldn't get it to seal tight enough so that you could get a connection from the stove to the tank to draw the fuel out
So
to burn.
so that brings me to something I want to bring up on this
Yeah.
is a big thing that I factor in when I'm packing is materials to fix stuff.
Oh yeah.
Like that's huge. I mean, like one thing that was good to have in your pack is that um, it's it's like the plumber's tape. It's like a
Yeah.
thin nylon that you wrap around threading to. to make a gasket essentially. They make it for gas, so like propane and stuff. Um, it costs you like a buck 29 at your local plumbing store or Home Depot or something, and that's great to have in your pack for exactly that situation because those threads are like a thin aluminum. I
Yeah.
mean they're not meant to be taken apart and put back together thousands of times.
Yeah, I've torqued at
So
it a lot.
in a situation like that, I mean that gives you, it's gonna create a seal and you could probably milk it for another month or two doing that.
Yeah, so that's exactly what we did in the moment when we were out there is
Uh-huh.
we took the electrical tape that was in the glove box and
Oh yeah.
we cut like a slip of that just like and we had to do this like all the time. We'd set it up on a new canister and then we would not break it down. We wouldn't touch it until that canister was finally finished. But we used it for almost the rest of it. Like the part on at Sisters Rock on the coast, that was like day 15 of 100. So we used it
Oh whoa.
we used it the rest of the time. We had to kind of supplement it with some other thing. Uh,
Yeah.
but yeah, we had to put a little bit of electrical tape around the threading and then try and like gently work it together so that it would hold enough so that we could boil our water and cook our food. But we did that a lot of times, man. We ran through like another half dozen canisters of fuel before we finally probably retired that thing. Yeah.
Well, that's great, man. I mean, that's what it's about. That's what's cool is like being on those long trips, or even just a trip where you're away from things. Like it forces you to be resourceful and kind of
Oh man, I love that
figure out
part.
what you can do with what you have.
Oh, yeah. Our tent broke. Our tent pole broke at one point. It was in the
Oh,
wind. Our tent was set up. It was weighted down. The wind came in while we were hiking, and it crushed that tent, man. It just torqued that thing over, and it snapped one of the poles. It snapped the one that was kind of under the heavier tension load. There's a few that were. It was an interesting tent design, but there's like one that was like it didn't matter. There's the other one that was like
hmm
torqued around 180 degrees. It was almost like both points were almost touching each other. And that thing just like crushed as the tent rolled over on its side. And we were like, well, shoot. And it was kind of a weird tent. We couldn't really get a replacement pole in that length and that size. And so we had to like
yeah.
figure out a way. I think what happened is if you would imagine, that there's the aluminum piece and then there's the peg of the next aluminum pole as it comes together with
Yeah,
that tent pole
it has like the
construction.
collar.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that collar. What had happened is that the it just broke out of that. Like whatever piece inserted into the piece next to it, it just snapped
Oh,
out. It kind of like broke out that first top inch of the piece of aluminum. And so we went over to this can that we had. It wasn't like a Coke can. I think it was just like some tin can that we'd had chili in, something something
uh-huh.
like that, or some canned tomato. And so we like clipped that down and had to roll that with a pencil to get like a little tube, and we like
Yeah.
rolled that around the broken part to be a splint for our tent pole so we could keep our tent
Yeah.
together on a camping trip. But we still, I mean, the tent's still like that. We use that tent for like another, I think like we are saying, another like 6 or 7 months. Way too many trips.
God, that's awesome, man. What was that like being out there on the road for
On the what?
115 days?
Oh man, it was so cool. Well, that comes back around to what we were talking about a little bit at the beginning when we were saying it's nuts when you think about what you need to bring for 3 days versus what you need
Yeah.
to bring for, in this case, like 100 days. My thinking about it was not very clear. I was only thinking about like the first week. It was really just bring everything, have it in your car, be loaded down. I even did this the year before in the car, and I thought I like knew better, but and I did know better. I cut down a lot of stuff. It was a lot easier the second time around, but you really notice that almost everything you can leave home in a big way. As long as you have
Yeah.
yourself and some level of resources around you, you can probably
hmm
get through or like survive most days and get to the next one in a significant amount of comfort. If you don't put yourself through hell, I suppose. But it worked
Yeah.
out. It worked out really well a lot of the time. Like it was strange because I guess what I would say is after maybe the first 2 weeks, first 3 weeks, I'd say after 15 days, your body acclimates to what it's doing in a kind of weird way. I don't know if you had this like
Yeah.
firefighting or if you've had it in like some other situation, but it seems like after maybe some number of days, it seems like you just get a little less dirty every day, or you sleep
Man.
a little better at night when you thought
Yeah.
there was no way you could sleep that well.
Exactly. but that's what happens, man. It's like your body just acclimates. And actually, I was talking about that with my dad yesterday. We were talking about how, where we live, it's pretty quiet. So like, um, we go and stay somewhere like in the center of like a city or something, and you can hear people talking, and you've got street lamps on,
Totally.
and you'll lay wide awake for the first 2 nights, but then on by night three, it's like you just get used to the background noise and stuff, and you just tune it out, and you're just falling asleep. But it's the same thing with being on the road or being up in the hills. It's like, uh, you get past that initial "oh, I'm dirty" feeling, and then that's just the way you are,
No, it's
or
really
you
true.
just you adapt to what you're doing.
And there's physical things too that happen. Like I swear that I mean maybe like a suntan is a good example of it. When
Uh-huh.
you have no exposure and then you're put under exposure a
Hmm.
lot more than you're used to, you get burned. It's sort of what happens. So like if you build up a tolerance to it, if you build up a tan, then you don't get burned. You don't get that caustic effect from the exposure of the sun. Sort of the same way
Exactly.
of camping or of being out in the wilderness for a handful of days. Is it seems like you got a little bit better at it. Like I remember, I mean, probably similar to a sunburn, but man, my lips would chap like crazy as soon as I got over into a different type of climate, or I guess maybe just a drier atmosphere or something like that. But yeah, as soon as you go east of the Cascades, man, my lips would chap immediately. Or if you went up an elevation, like up into like an alpine area, oh, it was
Yeah.
terrible. But then after I don't know what 1 week, 2 weeks, or something like that, it just wouldn't happen again. And then just
Really.
that thing, yeah, where you get, or like the thing that I remember the most. This is maybe more of just an awareness piece. I don't know if this
Uh
has
huh.
happened to you, but I remember I would get cut a lot when I first went camping, or even
Yeah.
like now, like at the beginning of the season. If I went out, I'd probably like get I don't know some kind of weird, some number of nicks from circumstances I was putting myself in with a pocket knife or with wood or with I don't know something I had to do. But my hands would get cut up more, and then after a pretty short amount of time, I didn't run into any more injuries like that. Just those circumstantial injuries, the small like little
Yeah.
abrasions that you get into. It just
Well,
stopped
and
happening.
that's funny. It's the same thing. Like, so I work in carpentry, and I can count probably 27 cuts between the two of my hands. That like they're just little one. I mean, a couple of them are there.
Oh yeah.
You keep hitting them, or it hurt when you got them, but it's just like they're everywhere. And you come home at night and you look at your hands and go, "What? Where did
Right.
that come from?" Or you're like, "Oh, that's a pretty open wound. I didn't know about that." And it's just your body just stops interpreting that as like a distress signal, and it's like, "Oh, this is the norm. This is just what happens."
Yeah.
And it's kind of like with scent, how like a new smell will be really overpowering, but like,
Sure.
or so you go to the landfill, right? And then you
Right.
spend
It's
an
awful.
hour there and you can't smell it.
Yeah.
And so what that is, and I'm sure but it's your body's defense. It detects new scents and makes them strong, so you're aware of them. But once your body figures out that it's not a threat to you and your livelihood, then it dissipates and just becomes, a subconscious scent that you're not actively smelling.
Yeah, I totally get that. I've heard that
Yeah.
before about like yeah, different scents and stuff that come through. It's weird. Yeah, it's probably an effect that's really similar to that with the stuff about cutting. But man, I remember it was so weird because we were just in the Camry at the time, this old '92 Camry, and like we would notice that we really just wanted to get rid of most of the weight of the things that were in the car. We only needed a backpack or two backpacks, you know? It was I don't know, it was just nuts when you figure out like, oh man, none of this stuff is really like what we need to get at. We really only do these two or three or four things, and we do those pretty repetitively, and you don't
Hmm.
need the rest of the stuff.
Yeah, no, you don't. And that's what I always enjoy that. Like when by the time you get done with a backpacking trip or a road trip or something, it really makes you realize how little you need to actually function in your day-to-day life.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
just how much excess stuff you just carry around for no reason. You come off a trip like that and you're thinking to yourself, uh, oh, I lived with nothing but a toothbrush and just like you know,
A water
just a
bottle, a pocket
few.
knife.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
And then you come home and you're like, wow, what do I have all this stuff for?
No, yeah, it's
What does
it's
this do?
it's definitely happened. I wanted to ask you about like the downriver stuff that you did on the road when you
Okay.
were when you were like what, I don't know, 3 or 4 day trips.
Yeah.
like what that was like, and or like so how much gear do you guys carry down? I mean, there's for the guests and stuff, but kind of cutting that out a bit, like for yourself, how much gear would you think that is per person, maybe?
So much. Um, okay, so us as guides pack. I don't want to say minimally, but we pack the necessities while staying comfortable. You
Absolutely,
know,
yeah.
it's like you don't want to underpack because we live down there. 90 to 100 days out of the year, so it's like you start um, you know, really trying to figure out what you enjoy. Like good sleeping equipment, nobody goes light on that. Everybody brings great sleeping equipment.
What's the best sleeping
Um,
equipment to bring for the lower rogue down there?
man, I've got what's called a rollicot. It's like a nylon material that it's like a rubberized. I don't even know how to explain it, but
No,
it's like a mesh material.
I saw
Water
that
just
of
kind of
yours, and I
seeps.
really want
Yeah,
that. That looked cool.
it's great. They're super durable. I mean, they're really strong. They're waterproof. Uh, I couldn't ask for anything better. And they roll up to like the length of your arm, and um, everything's lightweight and aluminum. It's just a good cot. Um, but anyway, that's called a rollicot. But yeah, we take that. I take a sleeping pad to kind of create a barrier between uh, the air beneath me and my
Sure.
sleeping bag.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, you bring yourself a nice pillow, a sleeping bag, and you're good to go.
Man, that it looks like a really good setup. I like that cot system that you had. And it sets up in like almost no time at all.
Yeah, you can have it put together in a matter of, you know, in less than a minute,
And it seems
which
super
is
durable
nice.
too. Like it's not really going to be affected by being weathered over a couple seasons.
Well, yeah, you get like fabric cots and stuff like that, and they'll, just between the sun and the water and whatever else, what other elements are getting to them, they'll just kind of rip and tear eventually.
Yeah.
Um, but no, when we go on those trips, the guides for the company, pack a pretty hefty setup.
Sure.
Um, we bring a full kitchen, so we've got four, stand-up stoves. We've got tables and pots and pans and jugs of water and coolers, and I mean, it's really a big operation that we do.
Yeah, sure.
And then the guests bring whatever they think they need to be comfortable with over the course of 3 or 4 days. And like we were talking about, when we can potentially overpack on a backpacking trip, um, people can really overpack when they're not carrying their own bag around.
Oh, yeah.
They're
Oh,
like,
yeah.
and you get a lot of people too that are from really urban settings, and getting down there in the canyon is kind of really outside their comfort zone, and
Totally. I understand
they've
that.
just got so much stuff. And
Yeah.
but that's why they hire a gear boater, right?
Yeah, I figure that's true. That's cool. So like probably a good amount of equipment. What if you and I just went on a trip and we had to haul out to a different river that was a little further away? So we were kind of trying to cut down a little bit. Like what kind of equipment would you bring on sort of a lightweight single boat trip down a
I guess
river?
a lot of that would depend on what the fishability of the river was. If we
Oh,
could get
sure,
away
yeah.
with potentially eating fish, um, I would cut down on food a good deal. It depends on just how comfortable you want to be. I mean, if you're interested in just having kind of a back to the basics, really kind of fend for yourself experience, you can go really light. I mean, you could go backpacking light with just a little isobutane stove,
Oh, that'd
and
be cool. I'd want to
I
do
I
that with you
really want to
sometime
do
this
a trip
summer.
like that.
We
Yeah,
should.
well, I've thought about that a lot. I really want to do one of those, and I want to do like a high desert trip like that too.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
A high desert rafting trip?
No,
A high
camping.
desert camping trip that was light
Yeah,
backpacking like that? Kind of alpine?
cottontails and streams, man.
Oh man. Yeah, like hunt and fish for all the food that you have, or have like a
Yeah.
couple backpacking meals or something. Man, that's
Yeah,
cool.
you obviously bring a backup, but yeah, that would be the idea.
That's a cool idea. Yeah. Well, I
Yeah.
like the idea of doing it on the river though. I thought that would be kind of fun, or have it set up kind of like a backpacking trip with a raft. I was wondering how self-sustaining could you be from a raft on a raft trip? Like how many days do you think you could do a raft trip
Well,
for?
I just had some friends that went down to Colorado, and they just did 33 days.
33 days. But they run into
Yeah.
stores, right? Or do they have anything like that? Like it's probably
Um,
pre-planned that they.
I from what I understand, they packed everything because I
Oh wow.
if you're not familiar with river guide culture, um, everyone's pretty poor. Um, so it's not like got a ton of money to spend at places. So I mean, really, it's like you kind of go on the cheap, but I mean, you bring the biggest hang up is what you need to keep cold. Like if you need to put stuff on ice and things like that.
Yeah.
If you can cut that stuff back, you can really be very self-sustaining.
Yeah,
You
yeah, I
know.
figure that was what we noticed at car traveling too. Is man, like having a cooler was a constant liability, where we just had to
Oh,
keep feeding
absolutely.
it
You're
ice.
always losing.
Yeah, and we're always losing energy. Like it's always going out. We're spending a hand, like probably a good bit just on ice traveling around. And we finally figured out, like one of the things we were talking about earlier, what you think at the
Uh-huh.
beginning versus what you think at the end. Man, cutting down on a cooler or cutting down on ice and things that you have to keep cold constantly. That was the biggest improvement of the maintenance that we had to do for our I don't know, like our trip travel
Yeah,
setup stuff. It was so frustrating to try and like always keep that and like you're always throwing away stuff that's gone rotten in some way.
exactly. And then also when you're in a car, the heat inside the car generally is amplified when you're in the
Oh
sun.
yeah, oh yeah,
But the big thing on like if you're packing a cold cooler, whether it's rafting or camping or whatever it is, keep it shut as much as possible. Every time you
sure.
open it, you're gonna lose. It's gonna heat up in there. So, I mean, just keep it shut. A lot of times you can duct tape the seal,
Oh
so you
cool,
don't
yeah.
lose any cold air from there. Um, and do that, and you can really keep food cold for a long time. Or just go to the store if you know you're going to be gone for 10 days. Get a couple blocks of dry ice and put those into a cooler that is
Oh yeah,
just a cooler for your ice. And then you keep that in there. You keep that wrapped with duct tape, and you only open it when you need to swap it into the cold cooler.
that's a smart
So you can
idea.
really,
Yeah,
yeah.
you know
So
we've.
you've got an ice box and then a cooler essentially.
Oh, okay. I like that. I like that thinking. That's kind of interesting. You know, we finally invested in a Yeti cooler, like one of those thicker, uh, lined coolers with like the rubber straps that come down, so it like clamps itself down the lid down
Yeah,
to the body.
how do you feel about that? They don't sponsor us, so I can
Yeah.
talk. I can speak my mind.
I think that they are. I think that they are too expensive. I think that they do keep ice well, and
Uh-huh.
it's like one of the better ways I've seen of a cooler. What's your experience with them?
Well, I have little experience with them, but I don't know. I mean, it just seems like I mean, yeah, they hold ice really well, and if I was buying it for the only reason is to keep ice cold,
Sure.
then I could validate that, but it just seems like you're paying, like $75 on a cooler that its interior area would hold a six-pack of beer maybe with
Oh yeah.
a
Oh
block of
yeah.
ice. You
That
know?
20 quart one that we have is small. Yeah. I think that the concept behind it, right? Nuts use of ice is that
Mhm.
you okay, so first you have your cooler, of course, just in the back of your
Uh-huh.
truck. You get a bag of ice, you put the bag of ice in the cooler, you shake it around, you leave it there for a half hour just to chill the cooler, just to
Yeah.
because it's too hot inside, right? Then you
Yeah.
dump that bag of ice completely. That's gone. Then you
Mhm.
put then you put 3 bags of like cold ice in there. I think there's like cold or what is it like? There's wet ice. Have you heard of that? Like when it's
Yeah.
like around like what 32 or something, it's like kind of like
Yeah.
running into liquid. It's what you get at every convenience store because they
Mhm.
they just turn up their freezers to like as high as they can go.
Yeah.
But then yeah, so you throw in another 3 bags of ice, like almost it's like 3/4 full at that point, and then you can put in what you're talking about, maybe a 6 pack of beer in there to keep it in its system. You know, to keep as much ice in the ratio as what it thinks you're supposed to. But at that point, it says at least you can keep that for like 5 days. If you keep the lid shut like you're talking about, it's sealed
Yeah.
in there really well. So you can keep that for a long time. It's not often something I've run into as needing.
Mhm.
But I
Well,
do
that's
oh god.
oh, that no, I was just saying I find they work fantastic. I mean, we use them on the river and I mean they're great for keeping ice, but I mean using them as a cooler that you need to get in and out of, and that's where you lose that er, so much of your cold air and stuff is opening
Sure.
those lids all the time.
Yeah.
And so it kind of doesn't really matter whether or not you've got a Yeti or a Coleman or whatever it is. It's when you're in and out of them, you lose the ice,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah. I see it.
and that's just kind of what it boils down to. So in that case, I'd prefer to have something with a little bit more area to actually keep food and stuff in.
Yeah, no, the Yeti one that you see like maybe at our, yeah, that was a pretty tiny one. Have you seen the big ones? Like, or well, probably the stuff that you guys would have. I figured it would be the
Yeah,
same size coolers.
we have the really large Yetis that we work
Yeah,
with.
and I've seen the stuff that goes on like the commercial fishing boats, like the
Uh
just like these huge one, like I mean like seafaring boats, like these
huh.
giant like bench size Yeti coolers that they build into the side of this thing that they're supposed to throw in fresh caught fish. But it's
What do you
nuts. They
think
make
that
them
costs,
huge.
man? That's got to be expensive.
Oh yeah, it's got to be an insane custom order of like $5,000. I mean, I
God,
guess at
yeah,
that point it's just like, well, yeah, we'll make whatever cooler you want. It's just like
yeah,
plastic and styrofoam at some point. So
exactly.
there's another company. There's like this other company called Arctic. Like I
Yeah,
think it's RTIC, and they do knockoff Yeti coolers. They like I don't know, drop ship them from China, something like that. But they're like maybe $150 cheaper than the Yeti cooler price. So it kind of brings
I've
them
heard of them.
it brings them back in that range of like a Coleman cooler or like something else that's more
Well, yeah,
reasonable.
and that's the thing, man. You start pricing coolers out, and it doesn't really matter what level of cooler you want to get.
Sure.
Honestly, I mean, for anything decent, you're looking around $100.
Yeah, yeah. It's
You
really true.
know,
Yeah.
and I mean that's just kind of like your average
Yeah.
decent cooler. I
Igloo
mean,
with the
yeah,
snaps on the side that you take to the tailgate.
you can get those guys for like
I
$39
hear
or
you. I
something,
know.
But
Yeah.
it's like, but if you get into like a steel belted cooler or anything that actually is
Yeah.
supposed to function correctly
Right.
when
Yeah.
you're out on a trip, yeah, I mean, you're kind of looking at a minimum of $100.
I'd figure that's definitely true.
Yeah.
Man. Yeah, that's a nuts thing too, is like how much money you can you can invest in your equipment like that. Well, probably we are talking about that boat, getting a custom Yeti cooler, it's 5 grand.
Yeah.
It's
Jeez, I
silly.
know.
But yeah, man, I don't know. Do you have any other stuff to bring up on this? I'm sure we're gonna talk way more in the future about like hiking equipment, backcountry
Well,
equipment stuff.
I did want to touch on you.
Yeah.
Aside from like your basics, like a water filter, your freeze dried foods, things like that. What are some things that you bring in your pack, not on a car trip, but on a backpacking trip? That just the important things aside from the obvious.
Oh yeah, that's a good question. So I mean, I know I try and keep my pack under 40 pounds is what I've
Oh,
done.
dang.
Each of the
Okay.
times. Well, yeah, I really try and keep it pretty light, which I guess a little bit what we're talking about. I don't know what to bring at a point. I got my tent,
Uh-huh.
which is just a couple pounds. I got like the stove, the
Uh-huh.
I got let's say like three of those, or like a handful of backpacker meals and some Cliff
Uh-huh.
bars. I've got a way to start a fire. I've got
Yeah.
I've got like my iPod or so, or like my phone or something like that charged up.
Yeah.
And so I'm trying to think of the other stuff. I mean, it's probably clothes that I bring. That's always been the spot where I bring more weight than I need to, because it's always like some kind of like I don't know. It's just like cotton t-shirts or another pair of jeans or something like that.
Yeah.
Oh man, and the worst one is like another pair of shoes. That's been the trick. I mean,
Oh.
because I want that,
Uh-huh.
like at least like a pair of boots, and then like a pair of like river sandals. Like there's always been
Yeah.
a situation where I want that. I don't know if that's been for you, like
Honestly,
when you're out.
that's been huge for me. I did that on a King's trip, bring sandals. I mean, if even if you're not getting into the water, it's just nice to let your feet breathe and just give your feet some type of different support than the hiking boot that you just put 20 miles on.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I noticed that a ton that yeah, I really needed to switch back and forth between the two, but I was always frustrated because you got to like store the other pair of shoes somewhere,
Yeah.
which isn't that much weight. It's fine, but they're always kind of an awkward sort of bulky size. I was trying to think of other stuff. See, like when I go out, or I think I'm looking up at a picture from the Wallowas, and I was thinking back to that trip of like special things that I brought or like different things. And what I would,
Uh-huh.
I think like we talked about last time, I always bring the camera bag with me. So there's the backpack of
Yeah.
whatever it is, but then like around the front, there's like the camera bag. with a couple lenses, and that's just all glass. So there's really no economy of weight going on there.
Yeah.
And yeah, other like a tripod, which is like metal legs and stuff. You don't need to be carrying it, but it's just like a
Hmm.
lot of weight that you have to like heave up to the top of the mountain. The other thing though that I was gonna say that I brought was like a keyboard. This is a nuts thing, probably in your mind, yeah.
Yeah,
But
you're losing me here. Go ahead and explain.
yeah, I brought a keyboard that I connected to my phone and like to my
Okay.
iPad so that I could do some of
Oh,
the like editing stuff that I was trying to do at the
yeah.
time, which was silly, and I probably wouldn't do it again
But you
if I
guys were
didn't
doing a
need
lot
to.
of editing and stuff, and a lot of journaling when you guys were out there.
It was what we were trying to do, yeah. So it was a lot of like it was a
Yeah.
lot of stuff. It was a weird job where you go like out into the woods and you take a bunch of photos and you try and like file and write about the photos while you're there. And I like
Yeah.
this kind of thing. You see it on Instagram every once in a while, like these cool tent offices. You know, it's somewhere out in the backcountry, and it's someone,
Uh-huh.
hanging out in the tent with the window open out to wherever, and they've just got their like iPad or their MacBook or something like that in the tent on top of the sleeping bags as they're working through and editing whatever. But you kind of think about like how light some of these things are, and you can haul them up there and work with them pretty easily now. But the problem is
Yeah.
power. So that was the thing about like a MacBook or a laptop. I couldn't support that. I couldn't power it up there. But what I did
Yeah.
do, and I think your dad turned me on to this for the first time, it was that
Uh-huh.
Goal Zero solar panel kit. Do you remember that?
Yeah, yeah.
I
He
don't
had
know if
that
you,
for a while.
yeah. So I bought one of those that was just like that. And I used that thing a ton on those backpacking trips. Have you
How did that
used,
work out for you?
yeah, it was the first time I had been using solar power, and really the only thing that it does, it's like two panels, maybe about the size of your two open palms or something like, it's like the size of like a good book.
Uh-huh.
So it's really not very big at all for like solar energy, and all that it produces is enough to run out to a USB charger, so you can charge your phone, and that was really what I was going for. So it was cool that you could just be out for a week or indefinitely if you wanted, and you could keep your phone or your iPod on. And when you turn it into airplane mode, the battery lasts for really quite a long time. So we
Oh,
used
yeah.
yeah, so we used that. We had a couple apps on it that we were using that don't have to connect to anything, but so you could
Uh-huh.
use that to file stuff or to write stuff or to record video
Yeah.
or to do whatever else. And so we could do that as much as we wanted to, and then just recharge it the next day and put it
Yeah.
out in the sunlight on the solar panel. It was cool.
That's great. Yeah, we when we did Joshua Tree, um, I was taking like a photo journal or sorry, a video journal of the whole trip. And that was eating up a lot of battery. And I was, I
Totally, yeah.
always use airplane mode for that, um, just to save that battery. But we took with us a little charging station, which is actually kind of cool on those road trips. Um, it has enough amperage to actually jumpstart your vehicle.
Yeah, I've
Um,
got one of
a-
those.
and then yeah, you got USB ports and stuff like that in there, and
I think
those
those
are
are
great.
really useful. Yeah.
Yeah, super great. I mean, because honestly, sometimes you get out there and it's just like, man, if you woke up with a dead battery and you're just 15 miles from anywhere
Oh,
where you're gonna
yeah.
see another person,
It's been a huge
you
concern of mine
know,
a number of times. Yeah.
and with the way vehicles are going anymore, everything's an automatic, so it's not like you're gonna compression start your rig out there.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was scary. I remember there was a couple times 'cause I was driving around that old Camry, man. You remember that? Like that was not that was not always a reliable car,
That was the
especially
best car.
it was it was the best car. Uh, but I remember there was like it had this problem, if you left it in an accessory or with whatever that your lights could be on mode was, it would
Uh-huh.
it would kill the battery in like a half hour or less. Like if you just left it on accidentally, or the stereo was on while you were away, or the door was open or something like that, it would kill the battery out. It was like
While
a
you walk into the gas station, it's just
yeah, I mean it probably could do that. It did that in fact a number of times. Oh man, little things you had to deal with. But
man.
so I
How
remember
many thousands of miles did you put on that car?
when I sold it, when I bought it, it was 250,000 miles, which is a lot to
Oh,
buy a car
just a
at.
just a spring chicken at that point.
Just a smooth quarter million. And then when I sold it for the same price I bought it, and that was with 367,000 miles on it.
Yeah, you're the only person I've known that made money on a vehicle that you just put 100,000 miles on it and made money off of it. That
That
car
Camry,
paid
man.
you to drive it.
That Camry.
That was great. That was
No,
a cool car.
it was a blast, and for as basic of a little sedan as it was, it really did a lot of stuff, and yeah, it was really fun. But it was scary though. Yeah, sometimes I remember being at this campsite where like the battery, I think died. Unfortunately, I think there was someone around that helped us like jump it right then. But
Hmm.
yeah, there was always like something about that in my mind. And I think the next trip that we went on, I did have one of those jumper kits in the car, and it
Yeah.
worked. It worked pretty well most of the time. I would recommend. I think like you were talking about earlier of what'd you say, like keeping up with and maintaining your equipment. Man, maintain that charger because it's you got to keep that thing
Yeah.
charged, kind of in the wheelhouse of the same season that you might use it in, because it does kind of lose it after a little while. Like I had one, like what, I don't know, that next winter after it went from 100 degrees out to freezing out, that battery is toast, and it's not really going to give you the amps you need to jump your car. I think I ran into that one time.
Yeah.
Or I don't know. I did what I drained it on charging my cell phone, something like that.
Oh god.
Yeah.
Yeah, I that's one thing I can say, and especially is like I don't know for me anyway. As I get into better equipment, I'm more motivated to take care of it,
Oh yeah.
um, and really maintain it. You know, when you're starting in your teens and whatever, you kind of just yeah, $30 sleeping bag, not a big deal or whatever. And then you know you just ruin things
I burned through a few of those.
unintentionally.
Well,
But
yeah, and man, those things they don't hold up the same way in a certain
no, they
capacity.
don't.
It's like that's I think a good bit of why they've been replaced over time is that burned through a couple $30 sleeping bags in a
Yeah,
season or two, and the zippers are twisted and split, and you go, oh, what's going on? Or I don't know, stuff with the tent, stuff with stoves, stuff with filters. There's always
yeah,
like,
and honestly, when it comes to outdoor recreational equipment, you really do. You just get what you pay for.
oh yeah, that's really
Um,
true.
man, I I just got to that point where it was like, do I want to buy the $30 sleeping bag three times, or do I want to buy the $120 sleeping bag once?
Yeah,
And you know, and that's just what it came down to. And so I started getting a little more picky when it came to choosing my equipment.
I've been trying to
But
be. Yeah, and there's a range of equipment. There's some equipment like you're talking about. I want to be specific. I want to get the good stuff. I want it to work. And then there's another class of it. I don't. It's kind of. I don't know if I've really honed it down well, but I almost want it to be as cheap as possible because it's so likely to break or likely to get lost.
yeah,
I don't know what that is totally yet, but I know there's like a handful of things that I've gone out. For unfortunately for me, it's sometimes like, well, it's not always pocket knives, but it's like some sunglasses. Sunglasses are a perfect one. Travel sunglasses for me.
exactly.
River sunglasses, I go for the cheapest ones. If they blow off my head and in water or whatever, there's nothing gone. I don't care. It's fine. I
Yep,
don't want the
that's
best gear.
and unfortunately the only way to come to that conclusion is to live through that situation multiple times the hard way.
Man,
Like,
I've lost some stuff that it wasn't super valuable, but it was just like, oh, it's just at the bottom of the river now for no
yeah, you know,
reason.
where you're
Oh,
still like, even if it wasn't really expensive, you're still like, well, that was $20, you
yeah,
know?
I don't have it anymore. Yeah, it's a bummer. So
Yeah,
there's a handful of those things that have that. Oh, this is probably just gonna get damaged and get blown out, whatever that is. I've tried to
yeah,
like cut down on a few of those things, but yeah, I think that I remember the time I learned that was the sleeping mats. You're talking about your sleeping bag. I've learned it so many times from a sleeping mat of not investing enough in that. Every night at like 2 or 3, the hour and a half after I finally fallen asleep after blowing up my bad excuse for a little camping mat. About 2 hours after that, I always wake up in the sleeping bag, kind of on the rocks under the tent. You know what I'm talking about?
yeah. No,
And
I
you're
know
just like,
exactly.
oh, it's that like thing where you're still asleep and coming into waking when you know you just have a rock in your kidney, and you're thinking, man, if
No,
only I spent
man.
$15 more on this mat.
You know what? I disagree with you there. Um, I like I've spent good money
Oh, for real?
several times on sleeping
Uh,
pads,
it doesn't get
and
better.
no, you know what? I got to the point like so. Well, first off, when I'm backpacking, I just got to the point where like I'm probably gonna be uncomfortable no matter what.
Sure. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I've been there.
but man, I was just like, I'm going to use the cot and use as little of the sleeping pad as I can because I have had nothing but bad experiences with sleeping pads. Uh, they always seem to they last a trip or two, and then they've got a hole in them. You got to patch them, or they just don't seem to hold air. I don't know, man. I mean, I guess you could get into some. I've seen them. You know, they're $200 sleeping pads.
The one
Um,
I got a Thermarest, like an or one that didn't have a lining on it. Some of them, like the REI one you get, it's got this nylon lining that makes it a little tougher. This one was just sort of the rubbery inside lining of that. But I had
okay,
one of
yeah,
those. It was, I think, less than $50. That's the one that I still have. It packs down to almost
okay,
nothing. It's kind of cool. I don't I've never thrown it down like on the rocks, as it were, or something like that. So it's always had like a tarp or some kind of lining under it and the ground. But I've slept. I mean, I don't know. Not to say that it's been inflated all these nights, but I probably put about 250, 300 nights on that mat over the
yeah.
last handful of years.
And it's been working out pretty well for you.
No, it's like it was deflated maybe 3 or 4 weeks after I got it. But it's like
Oh,
that thing
jeez.
where you gotta like it's just sort of you come to this point where you're like, oh no, I just wake up at 2:15 and at 4:10 and it's 6:35 and I just reinflate the mat and then I go back to bed.
It just becomes part of your nightly routine.
Yeah, it's just what you do. Yeah.
Just like getting up to take a leak, except
Yeah.
you blow up the old air mattress.
It's on the same schedule. It's like auto timing when I need to get up and.
Uh,
But yeah, it's been silly. Yeah, that's on the list for this year. For 2017, I'm gonna try and get a new mat.
good.
That's what I'm gonna try.
That's what you got to do, man. Figure out what's important. It's like, yeah, every year you try to buy like two things that will make your camping experience much better.
Yeah, yeah.
Because
Have you seen
I
people
know,
mess around with those like uh, it's not foil, but it's just like a dense foam mat that sort of collapses
yeah.
down into a little block. I've seen that like strapped to some backpackers kits before, but it was just sort of like this light foam mat that crunched down into a little deck.
Hmm.
I don't know. It was weird. I've never really used anything like that, but I bet it probably works really well for him.
Yeah, I've kind of been curious about those, and the other one I've heard good reviews on, and this is from some people that I backpacked with that had one, but it's like it kind of contours your body in a way that it kind of holds you inside the mat. It's inflatable, but it's got this kind of like it's almost the same shape as your mummy bag, but the sides kind
Sure.
of like protrude upward to keep you in it.
Oh,
Um, because I don't know. I mean, I'm sure you know, man. You get the lightweight sleeping pads and stuff, and you find out really quickly that you just roll off of them in the middle of the night
yeah,
or whatever. You know, it's just like they're hard to stay on. I mean,
yeah.
like I'm not a large individual by any stretch of the imagination, and
They're narrow though. They're
like
they're thin.
yeah, they're super narrow and thin, and yeah, I guess this guy Jimmy that I was backpacking with was telling me that he loved it, and I forget the name of the producer, um, but anyway, yeah, I guess it was really great.
That's sweet,
He
man. I
yeah,
gotta
he
look that
swore
up.
by it.
I'm probably way undereducated to really get in deep about like a lot of the different gear, the different manufacturers of outdoor gear. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like that catalog of REI equipment is sort of swimming around in my mind, but I can't really
y-
pin down at like a ton of different things. I'd be like, oh, what about this, Robert? What about this? Ooh, have you talked about
okay,
the feather down?
bring
Or
it, throw it at me.
I don't have anything really. I don't know. I think we've probably talked about a lot of it. Man, I'm a basics kind of person. I don't really care if it's like North Face or Patagonia or Acer Tech or Marmot or something like that. It's not
Yeah,
really like super important. And I know you're kind of like, man, most of my gear, most of my layers are from Goodwill. And
yeah,
they're old too, man. And actually, that's one of the best pieces of advice I might give to anyone who's bothered to listen to this point deep in our podcast. Which thank you, by the way. Uh, but it's nuts though. Like it's it's one of the best values that you can get for outdoor equipment was cruising through and having a really specific, clear agenda of the types of things you want to get out of Goodwill. Depends on your area, and you got to go. Like I did it in Corvallis. Man,
yeah.
Corvallis was a gold mine for
Hey, don't be giving away all the hot tips.
all the
Let's
hot tips.
keep this to ourselves here.
The Corvallis Goodwill. I pulled like a great North Face fleece out that fit me. It
Yeah.
was it was $8. Boom. There you go. Marina got me this marmot shell, this blue marmot shell for like less than $12. It was awesome. That's like a
Yeah.
$200 jacket. I replaced it with a new one and it was like $200 at REI. It
Man,
was
they
the real
they're
deal.
so expensive. Even like
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, you're getting quality, but man, there's got to be some point where it's just like it's too much money.
Yeah.
I go in there and I'll shop the clearance rack with my gift card that I get for like a birthday or something, you know?
Oh yeah.
And but you're still like, wow, this is a $60 flannel
Oh
or
yeah.
something.
Some of
It's
that
just
stuff,
like,
I don't see the value in some of it. Like we were talking about, there's like good things and bad things. Man, I went big on a rain jacket. I'm at work outside all the time. You went big on like the boots that you had for
yeah,
firefighting season. And like there's like sometimes it's like, oh, that's I need that. I need to have that
exactly.
thing. A lot of the time, maybe you don't need a new one of those, or whatever it might be. But
Man, I go big on rain gear.
yeah, that's what
Rain gear is big.
I put my money in having a good thermal layer, and I got a pretty expensive but like a nicer rain jacket, like a Gore-Tex rain jacket to go over it. And man, that thing has saved me. Like being out here in Oregon, I don't need really any other layers other than that. And I've noticed that like you can go from like snow to warm weather to like really intense rain, and you can pretty much keep that same like set of layers going that whole time, and it worked well like all the
Yeah.
time. But it's rad when you finally like get something that's like, oh, this is what I need. This is good enough
Well,
to answer for all these different situations I'll be in.
and that's what, yeah, I won't go light on anything that keeps you warm and dry. Um
Oh, sure, yeah.
First off, I don't even know if there's a really good way around going going getting around the expensive stuff on that.
Oh,
It
yeah.
all seems to be pretty steep no matter where you go. But
Yeah,
like, I mean, when it's hot, you can always shed layers. Like you can always remove clothing
sure,
and
yeah,
get cooler. But when it comes to being cold and wet, um, man, that's the difference between a good trip and a bad trip, or
yeah,
a
absolutely.
good trip and a serious
It's
situation.
changed my experience a ton. I mean, just kind of working outside a good bit through the day. Like even
Yeah,
today, coming through with like there's some snow on the hills, like a little bit higher up in the elevation, right on the valley floor. It's nothing, but it's pretty lousy winter weather. It seems like right now,
oh
but it's like
man,
it's just waves of rain like every 45 minutes or so. It's like 45 minutes on, 45 maybe 10, 20, 30 minutes off, then back on to just kind of this drizzle, this light rain drizzle that's coming down all the time. And if it weren't for the like the whole head cover, hood, and Gore-Tex like outfit I've got on, I'd be soaked all the time. Oh man, and
yeah,
like shoes, shoes are a huge one. Like we should talk about hiking shoes sometime. Like, cause
we
you've had
should.
like what's the boot that you go for a lot?
Mine are the Merrill
Yeah, the
Moabs.
Merrells. Yeah,
Yeah, I like those.
man, I've never had Merrells, but they seem pretty
Man,
cool.
they're a great boot. They're God. You know what? Honestly, when you price shoes, shoes are expensive,
They
no
are
matter
expensive.
what you're
Yeah,
looking for. Honestly, so I'm not even gonna say these are expensive.
I
I mean, they're in the
understand.
hundred
Yeah,
and $50 range,
yeah.
but
Same
you're
as a
gonna
pair of Jordans.
go, yeah, exactly.
Same as a pair
And
of
it's just
Yeezys.
like,
Way less. Way less than Yeezys.
yeah, no, they're great boots, man. I love them. They're the mid top, but we'll save that for another podcast.
Oh yeah, I hear you.
Um, but hey, so we always talk a lot about um, electronics in the field and things like that, um, in different ways that you take your stuff out there, and that's because you are a photographer, Billy,
Thanks,
and
Robert.
you take great photos. So, for anybody listening, if you want to check out Billy's photography, I believe it's billynewmanphoto.com.
.com. You got it right, man. I appreciate
All
it.
right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
let's
So
check out
go
some
check it out.
photos. Check out this podcast there. It's hosted on that site if you want to check it out. And yeah, the Get Out There podcast. The feed is up and going. We've got information about that at billynewmanphoto.com. You can check it out on iTunes. That's what I recommend. If you're hearing this, you probably already figured out how to get into the podcast app and look for this. But if you are, give us a review or rate it or subscribe to the podcast. It helps us out a lot in the first 8 weeks if we could ramp up
Yeah.
those numbers. We're going big time with this one, Robert.
Absolutely. How many people do we have? Probably 3, and then 2 of them are you and I.
It's probably you and me and our girlfriends, respectively. But
Yeah.
but we have passed, and this is great news, and it's under a week, and we're under 5 episodes. In total, we've had 100 downloads,
Whoa.
which is big time. It's again mostly me and you. I think
that's great, though. It's
I
all
think it's
fun.
like we've got around 11 listeners a show. No,
Right
maybe
on.
something like no man.
Hey.
It's all ephemeral at this stage. You can't really tell for a long time. But
No.
but overall though, man, it's really fun. I dig doing a podcast with you, even if it's 0 people that are listening to it.
It's still been a blast.
Yeah,
Yeah.
man. But you're smart.
But hey,
You know about the outdoor stuff, man. You're good at to
Well-
talk to you about this stuff.
no, it's great. I love picking your brain too, because you've spent, I mean, just as much time as anybody I know doing various types of camping.
Yeah,
So it's
fun
good.
to
I
break it
like
down.
speaking with like-minded people about these topics.
it's cool, man. It's cool.
But hey, sounds like we might have a trip planned for this weekend. We don't know
Oh yeah.
entirely what it is yet, but we got some things in the works. Maybe we'll do a little podcast from wherever we are.
We got to do one. Yeah. If we meet up in person, we'll definitely do a live podcast. It'd be cool.
Absolutely. So hey, for those 11 listeners out there, you guys stay tuned. We got a little something for you.
That's going to be a special treat. Episode
That's right.
6 coming up. Yeah. It's just like, hey, we hung out today. There you go. No, but we'll put it together. It'll be fun. It'll be cool. But yeah, Robert, thank you very much for doing this podcast tonight.
Yeah, thank you, Billy. It's been good.
I appreciate it, man. So, on behalf of Robert Biscarret, my name is Billy Newman, and thank you guys very much for listening to this episode of the Get Out There podcast.